Pride goeth before a fall. For those of you that are visiting, that's my dog. I'm pretty darn proud. The bookend on the left talks about where we are starting today and ending up next Sunday. Because Holy Week, from Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday, is a bookend type experience. Now, preachers are pretty much a self-absorbed lot. And when I thought about the title of the sermon, the bookend on the left, I was really thinking of this one, which is your right, your left, and not this one. It doesn't make any difference. We got Palm Sunday, one bookend. We have Holy Week. We have Holy Week. We have Maundy Thursday. We have Good Friday. We have Saturday. And then the other bookend is Easter Sunday morning and the joy of it. But what I want you to understand today is just like books on a shelf. If you take one of the books, if you take one of the bookends away, the story falls apart. It's not quite full. You've got to have Palm Sunday. It's a must. You've got to have the unpleasantness of Maundy Thursday and Good Friday. And then, praise God, and those of you ladies who are compulsive, I know I'm not putting those in there correctly, but then we have Easter Sunday. So I want you to be aware that today is the beginning. Today is the beginning. Just as Lent was the beginning of our high holy time of the year, today is the beginning of our high holy week, when we celebrate, when we observe, when we look, and once again, when we celebrate. Think about the bookends. Today is on one side, and we have to have it. And it's a good thing. A number of years ago, there was a rather famous American historian who wrote a book, and the title of the book was When the Cheering Stopped. And I couldn't believe whoever just prayed up there said, When the Cheering Stopped. And it was the story of President Woodrow Wilson and all of the events that led up to and followed World War I. Well, when World War I was over, Woodrow Wilson became an international hero, and there was this huge spirit of optimism, both in this country and abroad. And people worldwide actually believed that the last war had been fought and the world was at that point safe for democracy. On his first visit to Paris after the war was over, Wilson was greeted by cheering mobs. He was actually more popular than their local heroes. The same thing was true when he went into England and when he went into Italy. In an Austrian hospital in Vienna, a Red Cross worker had to tell the children that there would be no Christmas presents because of the war and all the hard times that the war had brought on. And the children didn't believe her. They said President Wilson was coming, and they knew that everything would be okay. Well, the cheering for Woodrow Wilson lasted just about maybe a year. And then it gradually began to stop. And it turned out that after all of the hubbub of the war being over, reality set in. And the leaders, the political leaders in Europe, were much more concerned with maintaining their power. They were more concerned with their own agendas than they were with a lasting peace. At home, Woodrow Wilson ran into major opposition in the United States Senate, and his dream, his ideal for peace, the League of Nations, was not ratified. And under the strain of all of this and Wilson fighting to get things done that he felt were best, not just for the USA, but for the world as a whole, he became ill. And he suffered a stroke. And in the next election, he and his party were soundly beaten. So it ended up that Woodrow Wilson, who a year earlier was a man who had had all glory, laud, and honor bestowed upon him, who people saw as the new world Messiah, a year later it came to an end and he died a broken and defeated man. Sound like anybody we're looking at this week? Sound like Jesus? You know, that's the way it happened. When he emerged first on the public scene, he was an overnight sensation. He would try to go off to be alone. He would go on a Friday night men's retreat with his 12 friends. And the people would follow him. And as we come to Palm Sunday, and the day that we celebrate today, the masses of people lined the streets as he came into town. And they had the leafy palm branches, and they spread them before him, and they took off their garments, their cloaks, and their robes, and they spread them before him, and there were shouts of Hosanna. And in shouting Hosanna, what they were saying, Hosanna translates, save us now. Save us now, comma, Jesus. You're the one we're looking for. They were looking toward Jesus to bring to them all that they had been anticipating for centuries. And great crowds came to hear him preach, and this huge wave of religious expectation swept over the country. But like with Woodrow Wilson, the cheering didn't last long. And there came a point in Jesus' ministry when the tide began to turn on him. And you don't notice it so very much at first. People still thronged to see him, but that excitement was missing, and the crowds weren't quite as big as they had been in the beginning. His critics, who had been afraid to speak out against him for fear of retribution from the crowds, now began to speak publicly. And they realized that the public, just like we are every 4 years in an election, the public was fickle. So they turned on Jesus, and soon the opposition to Christ began to snowball. And when they learned that they could not discredit Jesus' morals or his character, then they began to take a little bit more desperate measures. He was in trouble because the tidal wave was beginning to roll against Jesus of opposition. And that tidal wave eventually would knock him down. under the weight of the cross. Why did the masses turn against him? How did those wonderful, joyful, exuberant shouts of Hosanna, Hosanna on Palm Sunday morning turn into shouts of crucify him, crucify him, crucify him on Friday afternoon? Why did the cheering stop? Well, one reason the cheering stopped is Jesus began to talk about something new and different. Jesus began to talk to those who were coming to hear him about commitment. And during the last week of Jesus' life, a very interesting scene played out, and very significantly, it happened in full view of a number of people. You know the story, a rich young ruler came enthusiastically running to Jesus. And you're familiar with the dialogue that took place. What must I do to be saved? It's all a very simple question that rich young ruler asked to Jesus. And, Jesus just told him, you must be born again. And when that happened, the rich young ruler turned and left. Now, when that happened, the masses of people were stunned. They weren't ready for this type of thing to happen because they were troubled for a theological reason. They had been raised, the good Jews, to believe that God had especially blessed rich men. Do we have any folks today preaching on TV that say, hey, if you're rich, you got to be good. You got to be moral. And if you are good and if you are moral, God's going to make you rich. Don't buy that.